After the success of my ARMS hot takes video and with how much fun I had doing it, I knew it was gonna be a great idea to keep this as an ongoing series on my channel. So once again, I asked you on Twitter, YouTube, and Reddit for your ARMS hot takes, and they did not disappoint. We've got a lot of ARMS 2 related takes this time around, so with all that said and done, welcome to Hot Takes 2. Take number 1 is from Tabs, and he says, people who say they want a follow-up for ARMS but in a different genre basically don't want ARMS. So I've actually seen a lot of chatter about ARMS recently, where people claim that everything that is quote-unquote bad about this game is the gameplay, whether it be because of an alleged lack of depth, or all the characters supposedly playing the same as each other. And while the gameplay does have its problems, which I'll touch on later, I honestly don't think the core of the gameplay is a problem at all. To give a perspective coming from a comp player, as is, this game has crazy levels of optimization, planning, and strategy at top level. And I'm pretty sure a lot of these people would be surprised to see how big the skill gaps can be. Another important thing to mention is that ARMS from its inception was built around the how can we make a fighting game with the camera behind the player question. And changing the gameplay to something like, say, Punch-Out or a platformer would just not be ARMS like Tubbs says. In short, the game doesn't need to change genre at all. It is a solid base for what could be a potential series, so all they really gotta do to captivate new players with the sequel is to build on what they already have. Also, it wouldn't be smart to completely alienate longtime fans of it. I really agree with this take here. This one from Danny says, ARMS should have all attributes consist of all 3 weight classes available in the game, so picking some of them won't feel like a technical disadvantage the majority of the time. And I will agree outright, I think this game needs more weapon options and an incentive to play more than only gloves. It would probably make a much more fun meta, honestly. However, when it comes to the dev actually picking kits for every arm, this is something that they must handle delicately. But I think they've done a good job so far, considering half of the elements like electric, stun, explosion, and poison are repped in every weight tier and don't break the game at all. So they can definitely make an ARM roster like this a balanced roster, as long as they don't pull something off like Electro Scully. For the next one, Sparks McLeod says, if ARMS 2 launched with the exact same roster but had a proper story mode set in the everyday world of ARMS, I'd still consider the game a proper sequel. This one's really spicy, even considering that a story mode is the most apparent omission from this game and probably what we all want from a sequel. A story mode will definitely be a welcome addition, but no matter how substantial the content in that mode is, ARMS is a multiplayer game at heart, and ARMS 2 would still need to have brand new faces for most of us to consider it as a proper sequel. And considering that the weapons and stages are also tied to the characters, we would need more of those too. So while I do disagree with this take, I think everything goes hand in hand. A sequel must feature both a good story mode and brand new additions to the cast. The absence of one or the other would result in a samey feeling from a sequel. Continuing with the ARMS 2 related takes, these two are similar, so I'll read them together. Astro and ARD say, ARMS 2 should contain more movement, attack, and rush meter options, because the game as is a rush farm fest. This is exactly one of the points I wanted to touch on when I mentioned gameplay problems earlier. The over-reliance on rush can be a bit too much at times, but it is completely valid as it's one of the strongest options in the game. So I feel like it would be a natural evolution of the formula if they give you more options with it, like spending a bit of meter to restand opponents and cancel attacks for more combo potential, or spending meter for dash refreshing. I feel like rush as a mechanic is severely underexplored and could add even more depth to the game if expanded on correctly. This next one really speaks to me, from my best friend Xblade, and he says, ARMS has got to be the most creative Nintendo has been in a long while. The detail on the stage and character design is superb and highly underappreciated. I stand where I stand regarding ARMS being one of Nintendo's most creative IPs, if not the most elaborate one, lore and design wise. I am in infinite agreement with this. I feel like because it's more popular, people praise Splatoon for certain character and world design aspects that I honestly think ARMS does better, even with far less story. I can also agree that ARMS in character and world design is modern Nintendo at its strongest. There's a lot going on in this game that goes underappreciated because people dismiss it a lot. One of the things that make this world so interesting is the ARMS gene and how it can manifest on people, animals, and even trees and plants. We also have all the sponsors and brands that show all over the stages, making this world feel much more alive. And going back to the characters, I feel like it would be criminal if Nintendo left them to waste without giving them some sort of follow-up. You just know the character design is strong when every character is someone's favorite. On the topic of stages, they are also beautifully crafted with secrets and attention to detail that I would honestly need a whole video to go over all of them. Finally, in terms of lore, you can sit down and explain it to someone for hours, because even if the game isn't directly telling a story, there is a lot of world building that can give you in-depth insights of how this world works while adding to the mystery of it. So like Xblade said, this world is super elaborate with a lot of room for growth in both lore and world design, and I hope to see more of it in the future. And I also want to read this similar one from Pikmin Luffy that says, ARMS is a top 3 Nintendo game/series in terms of character design. And I also have to heavily agree. Even though ARMS has a lot of competition for best character design with other Nintendo IPs, it should undeniably be in the talks for top 3. I can argue that this roster is extremely memorable too, even when some characters are more popular than others. But I feel like everyone has their place in the roster and no design overshadows another. This game honestly deserves more recognition among Nintendo fans, even if it's just to praise the designs. This next one from PK Timestop says, people need to stop comparing Splatoon to ARMS. Sure, they're both new IPs to Nintendo that release close to one another, but that's all. I had to disagree partially. This is something where it's really hard to not make a comparison, because even if they are in completely different genres, they are both IPs that had the same goal in mind. You can fairly compare something like Splatfest versus Party Crashes, and even if I found Party Crashes to be more fun, Splatfest just do it way better. Another example of a fair comparison is how Nintendo supported the competitive aspects of both games, and I think they did a better job with ARMS because of all the focus and support on actual competitive events like ARMS in EVO Japan, or the addition of a tournament mode that unlocks everything for you to use in arenas, which really helps a lot as a newcomer and when people held LAN events. Now, in my personal opinion, ARMS is the better of both IPs, but in the end, it just boils down to personal preference. It is important to keep in mind though, that comparisons and discussion can and will always happen. Time for the next one. Aya says, Twintle has to be by far the most annoying character to fight against, and one of the worst characters in general. Now, if you've been around my channel or live streams, you probably already know how I feel about this. And yes, I do think Twintle is objectively the lamest and most annoying character in the game. She gets away with so much for free, and it's quite outrageous. And I don't think it really matters who you play as. Twintle is most likely always gonna be the most annoying character you can go up against because of her aura. But this is another video that I had to make, because I think she's honestly horribly designed. Prince is back again with another hot take. It says, ARMS 2 doesn't need an avatar maker, and I feel the game's story should be similar to Mortal Kombat. I can honestly get behind this. I'm not really a huge fan of self-insert characters that take the role of a protagonist. It never really clicked much with me. So I would much rather have the story mode be like Mortal Kombat, by switching characters every chapter. Avatars really seem like an unnecessary addition in ARMS. I would also take character exclusive skins any day over an avatar maker. Manco says, better marketing and a later release date could have made it look less like a gimmick game and more like Splatoon. Plus, badges suck. I agree with the first take but disagree with the second one. This game had little to no marketing, and when it did, it featured the motion controls as its main control scheme, which is probably the worst marketing strategy they could have done for a new IP. About badges, there's not much I can say. I just outright disagree with them being bad. They made playing the game more fun with achievements, but I only think the Party Crash exclusivity sucks, if anything. The next one from Ditto says, it's 7 years on and I think ARMS is still one of the best looking Switch games. And this is something I keep saying honestly. This dev team has an amazing track record for modern visuals thanks to Mario Kart 8. The base game that is, right? And it's weird that ARMS doesn't get enough recognition for that, considering that the Switch 2 is almost here and the rumors say it might be a huge leap in specs. I'm excited to see what they can cook with ARMS 2 in terms of visuals. Now, I'll read and have this take from Loser. It says, ARMS would probably be terrible without motion controls as an equal control scheme. For me, it's always been the opposite. I don't see how this game benefits from having motion controls be so prevalent. They're the one thing that are keeping the game from having more options per character in my opinion. I don't think they should be removed per se, but I do think that the game should be designed completely around a traditional controller in mind. Hang on, because the takes aren't done yet. Just like last time, I brought a special guest to the video so we can have another perspective from a player and fan of the game. Please give a warm welcome to my girlfriend Megan, as she will read more of your takes.
Sup, I'm Felipe's girlfriend Megan. I've been playing ARMS prior to June 6, 2018 being the day I purchased a copy, where my friend at the time encouraged me to play the demo after I expressed my interest in watching some open tournaments on YouTube. The sole reason I never came across ARMS was because I had received my Switch in December 2017 after its release, even though I remember having some recollection of it existing at the time. I played ARMS casually until July 2020 when I first met Felipe. We met when I interacted with his tweet about his keen attention to detail when it came to the Springman and Springtrons logo mishap on Spring Stadium in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Felipe, having played ARMS for quite some time, encouraged me to play competitively. Playing competitive ARMS not only improved my skill and knowledge of the game, but has also allowed me to make some of the closest friends I have and talk to today. Here are some ARMS facts about me. When I first played the game, I originally made Ribbon Girl instead of my current main Springman. He really just appealed to me one day and I went for him. I also really like his character design, and well, if you've known me for some time, he's just hot. Sorry, not sorry, Felipe. He went hard in my single era and he still does in my Taken era too. My favorite ARM kit consists of Birdchuck, Roaster, and Triblast. My playstyle is very mid-range. I like running away rather than getting up in people's faces, and Triblast really helps me get away with this. I'm more comfortable playing from far away than getting too close, except when I feel like it's necessary to knock down or pressure my opponent. Anyways, enough about me. Let's get to these hot takes. Loser says, Kid Cobra is the only fighter that is fun to watch. I disagree with this, but not because Kid Cobra is not fun to watch, I'm just saying he's not the only fighter that's fun to watch. A single character meta can get really stale. Imagine if everyone in competitive ARMS main Kid Cobra. As a spectator, you would probably get sick of watching the same character being played. Now sure, many players would use different ARMS on him, but that only goes so far in terms of player expression and what ARMS are cohesive with his abilities and playstyle. No disrespect, this take just seems very close-minded. Imagine how hype it would be if someone were to play a low-tier character like Bite and Bark and destroy a top-tier one like Kid Cobra. Considering Bite and Bark's disadvantages, the competitive community would go crazy and would want to watch and see how they are able to execute such a difficult battle. It's intimidating to play a character when it's commonly known they are at disadvantage, and that's why it's so much more interesting when they win and come out on top. The same goes for playing a character using ARMS that don't work with their playstyle. Seeing a player make it work is great. Prince says, I do believe ARMS 2 should have way more offensive options for characters. Some characters become awful once you take away a certain arm from them, so I feel a native offensive option / gimmick for some characters that struggle in areas would be good. This kind of aligns with the last take I read, where I explained that it is more enjoyable to see a wide range of characters being played, but we obviously do not see that because of this exact take. Personally, because of my mid-range playstyle, it would make it so much easier to have deflect deal damage, so I would not feel more intimidated to get close even with health disadvantage. I could see most of the characters in the ARMS roster benefit from an offensive option where they do not rely on an arm to be considered a good character. I also feel like offensive options would make it more difficult for top tier characters to pressure low tier ones into a corner, presenting more of a challenging aspect for matchups in the game. I definitely feel like Nintendo missed out on a lot of creative opportunities when it came to the different offensive options for characters based on their own charms, characteristics, and current abilities. Hooba Doobatron says, the Black Horse ARMS comic illustrations and art style are ugly AF, and they should have went with a style more akin to the unlockable art in the gallery. It looks like they tried blending anime and realism for the style, which I think comes off as super awkward and weird. I honestly agree with this one. As much as the release of the comic was anticipated from a community with hardly any official content given from Nintendo at all, the art style chosen for the comic was very off-putting compared to the official art, and more resembles the art style as something you'd see in the Marvel comics. While I would have wanted to read the comic regardless, I agree with the fact that the comic could look more dynamic like the game's art, while still adding its own spin to it. A good example of the art style being adapted correctly is the manga, where it looks similar to the in-game art, so we could have the comic adapt a similar art style without making it look too much like a manga. When I first read your take, I disagree because I have an emotional connection to wanting to see whatever art or story we didn't get to see, but as I thought about it further, I can see how this art style, being the gallery art, could potentially make this whole comic experience better. These are all the takes we have for today. Back to you, Felipe.
Thanks, Megan. Once again, I'm glad to have been able to read all of your takes. It's always fun to feature perspectives from the rest of the community here on my channel. This video came out later than usual for my uploads, but I made sure to polish it just as much, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. With all that said and done, we've been SNG and Megan, and don't forget to subscribe for more ARMS content.